No boy, here we go. I've made a few pot shots at this game before. Can't show all the finer details. Just whack some pros on there, that'll do the trick, right? But I'd never actually played Corpse Party. And believe me, I'm not addicted to having drive-by opinions on any game, unless it's Fire Emblem Fates. It was just hard to coax myself into playing a game on a platform I couldn't reliably record from. But now there's a version on PC, I guess I have no excuse anymore. But it's not like I was disinterested either. No game with a reference to Oingo Boingo is gonna slip by me. At least I think the title is a shout out to Oingo Boingo. Plus it's an anime styled, horror influenced game under the visual novel label, even though it's not really a visual novel. And hey, I like a few of those, ho ho ho. Anyway, Corpse Party takes place at a Japanese high school, where a bunch of kids are goofing off telling ghost stories on campus, long after they should have gone home. Just before they head out for the night, they decide to perform a ritual with a paper doll that will make them friends forever. But they fuck it up. Literally, one of the kids messes up the amount of times they say the chant, and that's what gets them stuck in a ghoulish nightmare school modelled after a 30-year-old school where a bunch of grisly child murders happened. Ooh. It's more or less the vengeful spirits of a few murdered children that keeps trapping and killing people. So yes, this is basically Five Nights at Freddy's. Alright, so the concept is a straightforward ghost story at its core, but it does some deliciously twisted things with the internal logic of the setting. Heavenly Host Elementary is not simply cordoned off in some weird ghost realm. Instead, the school will often be affected by earthquakes, which will not only shift the layout of the school, but also affect the temporal standings of the students within. See, even though they're all in the same school, they're not all in the same time zone. Some chapters will see some students come across weird phenomena that won't be explained until you see it firsthand from another party's perspective. Or they might run across their friends, but only as shadows, stuck in some ambiguous other side of the school. It's engaging, it helps to get you concentrating on the school's layout, and it's about as interesting as the game gets. I'm gonna fire on all cylinders here. I did not care for Corpse Party at all. More than that, it's very difficult for me to step back and ascertain quite who this game was made for, because it's a hodgepodge of elements so lightweight that not only does it never congeal into anything meaty, but it also means no one facet of the game is strong enough to carry it. Where do I even start? I guess the presentation, maybe? Now, I can accept that this game is going to be a good deal more romanticised than your Suspirias. So even though this wide-eyed anime art style kind of betrays the scariness of the ghosts running around, I can accept it's trying to invoke unease and juxtaposition. I mean, that's why the villains are kids, I'm sure. But one of the greatest tools a horror media maker has is music, and Corpse Party could not have dropped the ball harder. Listen to this. This is the main theme of the first chapter. Yes, loud synths and distorted guitar. You don't think you guys should have gone for something more low-key, especially for the first steps in this haunted school? Much of the music is like this, loud, obnoxious, and ill-fitting. Alright, well, how does the game actually play? Obviously, you'll have to carefully comb your way around the school and try to find your fellow students a way out, or even a way to put these kids to rest. It's pretty old school in how it mechanically unfolds. In fact, I would be surprised if this game wasn't made in RPG Maker, because even though there's a HP stat displayed prominently, there are literally 2 places where it can be drained. Trust me on this, I deliberately checked. See, I bring this up because it might sound like a nitpick, but it highlights how little meat Corpse Party has on its bones, that even this otherwise grandly important value is completely extraneous. The game is very, very light on interactivity. Most of the time, all the mechanical input you have is simply running back and forth through the school, picking up items, solving a few puzzles, dodging a few death traps, but it feels like the most vanilla way of doing this sort of game that to actively play it is frankly a chore. For the first few chapters, simply exploring the school is fine, you know, taking in the atmosphere, getting to grips with the danger, but after a while you begin to notice that, well, how should I put this? My least favourite game of all time is Clock Tower 2. I imagine some of you would have seen Retsupre's take on it. The long and short of it is that game sucked because it was just a bunch of running back and forth within an enclosed area to go through arbitrary steps to solve arbitrary puzzles, and there was no sense of internal logic in even the most basic forms. Corpse Party is not as bad, mostly because there is a bit more internal logic to it all, but I can only think of Clock Tower 2 when I think of how general progression was handled here. So many times from chapter 2 onwards, I would throw up my hands, say, okay, now what do I do? And go through the age-old process of looking through every room, clicking on every object, finding items that just suddenly appeared for no reason and allowed me to progress only because the scenario writers said I could. I mean, that's just not a very gratifying form of gameplay. It's incessant, and the amount of times I got stuck hoping for any sort of progress was bullshit. Every so often the game would give me a legit puzzle, but I didn't care for these either. Okay, the way the game works is that there's one good ending and a whole bunch of bad endings for each chapter. Again, Clock Tower 2. While there's nothing as bad as if you don't check this one suit of samurai armor, it'll just fall on you in a different building halfway across town, the for want of a nail factor in Corpse Party is still overt. Here's one of the first challenges. There's this ghost kid sitting in this classroom. You have to move around him to get to this nail puller, and if you look him in the eyes, you die. Fair enough, it's a cool little movement puzzle, the sort of thing you'd see in a Pokemon gym. After this, you head out and your partner runs off towards the entranceway. You go and grab her, and it turns out the kid is just waiting for you outside. It's an unavoidable game over. Alright, so do I go and use this nail puller for its intended purpose before joining up with my partner? No. If you do that, she wanders into a trap that slices her in two, and your character will sit there in disbelief before being gutted himself. No. What you have to do is grab this stone at the back of the classroom, as the teacher who dies within 5 minutes of controlling her, give it to these two students and it'll protect you one time from the ghost's gaze. Now here's my question, how in the name of Sachiko is anyone meant to pass that out their first time through? There's an internal logic here, but because it's governed by ghosts and a setting divorced from Euclidean space, human intuition sure can't work it out. There are many moments just like this, where you'll get to a tough spot, not know what to do, die, try something and die again, try something else and somehow get through. It's especially bad with the times you have to physically run away, because hasty movement on a fixed 4-way grid isn't graceful at all. It got to the point where when I got a bad ending near the end of the game where I got stuck in a time loop, I'd had enough, and I just looked up the true ending because I didn't even want to think about what I did wrong to mess up around the final corner. Maybe I would have bothered if the narrative were better, but it's really not good either. The premise is about as simple as you can get for this sort of horror setup, and really, me telling you it's a bunch of kids pissed off they were murdered by a serial killer is not a spoiler. There's a bit more to it than that, but it doesn't amount to as much as you'd think. I was especially hoping for a lot more in regards to the spiritual construction of this space between spaces, but there are actually not a lot of details beyond the murders that damned all these kids in the first place. I could maybe accept this being an isolated ghost story about a few tortured souls if A, so many students from other schools hadn't died here earlier, and B, if there were a strong resolution to even this arc. But when I went to bed after having seen the ending, as I struggled with my insomnia, I thought to myself, wait, some of those plot points weren't explained or concluded, and one was deliberately contradicted to keep the school around so we could have sequels for no reason. On top of that, you have your B plots between the students who are still alive, a love triangle here, a sister complex there. Hey, this game really was influenced by Oingo Boingo. I love little girls, they make me feel so good. Or maybe this is just an anime trend that needs to die. I keep piling on this game, but truth be told, there are a handful of things that work about it. Those game over descriptions sure are grisly. When you, as a little girl, get caught by a ghost that cuts your eye out with rusty scissors and the text goes on and on about how the pain increases with every heartbeat and your heart rate is faster due to the panic setting in, so the agony just increases exponentially and all you can do is pray to die quicker, you're gonna be at least a little unsettled. There's a couple of times where the pure emptiness of the school creates an eerie atmosphere, as much as the music tries to get in the way. And you know, dying all those times sure kept me aware of what could kill me at any given corner, but it did it in the most ham-fisted and disrespectful way possible that I'm not going to give this game the satisfaction of praise for it. On top of all this, I have this nagging feeling that the PC version might be inadequate. First off, when I say I want 1080p, I want my 1080p. At the very least, can't you find something to put there so these black bars don't just jar horribly against everything else? This version is definitely missing a whole bunch of bonus chapters, not that I liked the game enough to try a single one anyway. The 2D portraits are different, I think, but there's definitely an art style clash between the Kishigami students and Kazami the pedophile, which makes me think something couldn't be upscaled properly and had to be redrawn all over again or whatever. what the game's definitely missing, and if I tell you this is the big one, you can probably figure out the gist of it, it's missing some gore. I mean, there's blood in the game, there are a few spectacular moments, but I quickly looked up to see if some of the bad endings were missing some depictions of the game overs, and that's basically what happened. Because there's very little 2D art in this game, likely for game engine or resolution reasons, it has to rely solely on text and pixel art to portray as horror. Something tells me I'm going to have similar problems by the time I get to 999 too. So it's not censorship, but it is missing gore. Actually no, there was one bit where I think they did try to censor it. Keyword being try. As you can see, they tried to mosaic out these corpses, but there's a couple of seconds earlier in the sequence where they're completely uncovered. And although you don't need a keen eye to really see it, I was so glad I was recording so I could catch this for posterity. And why did you even try to do this anyway? This is a game where 4 kids had their tongues cut out and one was stabbed over and over until their intestines just fell out. It's a little late to aim for that PG rating. Man, I've really come out swinging tonight. This isn't the worst game I've played. Again, Clock Tower 2 doesn't falter so easily. But the most damnable thing I can say about Corpse Party is that I don't know who it's for. It's too anime for horror fans, it's too grisly for anime fans, it's too run-of-the-mill for survival horror fans, it's too arduous for visual novel fans. I can't recommend it to anyone. That's just it. I can't recommend Corpse Party to anyone. The achievements strongly hint that we will get one of the sequels on PC at some point, but I'm going to break my usual rule of franchise completionism and give it a hard skip. 1, well, obviously I feel that much disdain towards the first game. 2, it's called Book of Shadows. It's a shitty horror sequel named after another shitty horror sequel. No thanks, bro. I can't think of a way to exit this video. Fuck this game. Hey Connor, I thought you said you were going to review Dead Space. Yeah. New Ratchet & Clank games come first. Well, I'm wasting time. You're probably looking at this and going,
cool title, what the hell is this?
I mean, there's no way a developer just wouldn't explain the time travel elements at all, right? That'd be crazy. I'll stop. The Phantom Pain must be Kojima's way of saying,